Hey, what's up, guys? This is Mark. I'm back to talk about fantasy football. Thank you for watching, and keep commenting and let me know what you think of this advice. I really like to do this stuff to try to help people out. And basically, this video is going to be a lot of strategy involved. Like I said, this is a game that you want to try to get people at their highest stock and sell them to get better players. So for this video, what I'm going to focus on is guys that you want to consider drafting in the later half of your draft that could give you a lot of value in week one, and then you want to try to trade them after week one. So these are guys that you're simply going for because of the week one matchup. And that could be a big asset for you, especially if you can get these guys at the end of the draft, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So first, going to answer a few questions from Nathan. He's the fan of the show. He's really appreciate all that he's done for his advice and support. And I'd like some more subscribers too, by the way. I only have one right now, but you got to start from somewhere. So 3 questions today from him. So first question is, what shoe size do you wear? So I wear a size 13. Pretty straightforward answer. What is my biggest fear or phobia? So that's a complicated one. I mean, I feel like for me, like my biggest fear would be to sit back when you're older and look back at your life and feel like you wasted it. Feel like you didn't really have any kind of impact on people, or you were doing things all for yourself and not really for other people. So I think that's my biggest fear, is just like getting older and thinking about that and having that in the back of your mind. Like, I want to feel like I enjoyed and was able to have impact on other people in my life and not feel like I was stuck being selfish or something like that. So sorry that was a too deep an answer for you or whatever. But and then the last question is, can you dance? So, all right. So there is a big difference, first of all, between the capability to dance and dancing well. So yes, everybody has a capability to dance, but do I actually dance well? I don't know. You got to ask the people that are around. I mean, I don't know that myself. That's my answer. I don't know. I'm not going to demonstrate it or anything, but anyway. So that's a few more questions about me. I'll answer some more as time goes by. So before I get into these targets that you want to look at, here's some news that's happened in the NFL that's pretty important. So as I've discussed, Melvin Gordon is not happy about his contract. He's now requested a trade. San Diego does not want to trade him. So is there going to be another Le'Veon Bell situation here? And that is a legitimate question. So the thing is with Melvin Gordon that you have to understand is that although Austin Eckler is the guy that's second on the draft chart, he is the change of pace back. He's more of a third down guy. The guy that's really going to make a significant bump on this team, if Melvin Gordon sits for a while, is Justin Jackson. And he already demonstrated that in the November, early December timeframe last year, when he did have to step up for Melvin Gordon when he had a knee injury. So don't forget about Justin Jackson. That's the guy is going to be at the end of the draft, and he's a good sleeper to have. And then same kind of thing is going on in Dallas. I don't really buy the Dallas situation as much, though, because they need Zeke Elliott, and I think that they're eventually going to work that out, but you never really know there either. So those are 2 running back situations to watch, because those are pretty much consensus first-round picks. Another consensus first-round pick is Antonio Brown is dealing with foot issues, and he hasn't really been practicing. I'm not really worried about it, because apparently, like, according to the articles, it's just blisters. I mean, really the biggest thing that Antonio Brown that's holding him back is just the fact that he acts like a child all the time. Like, he's like going to practice in a hot air balloon or some garbage. Like, I don't even know. So, other news, Cameron Meredith, he was cut by New Orleans and was signed to the New England Patriots. So I don't think that does anything for Cameron Meredith. In fact, it just makes him and all the other New England receivers worse, outside of Julian Edelman maybe. But New Orleans, it really has a big impact, because with Meredith gone, there's going to be more targets for guys like Ted Ginn, but he's kind of reached his peak. The guy that I'm really looking at is Traquan Smith. I think he can make a significant jump. And I'll get into these guys later, actually. And then in other news, Donta Foreman got cut by the Texans. I thought that he might be starting to break into the scene, because he's a guy that's always been talked about as having potential, but evidently he's not showing enough in practice, so he's cut. And I'm not really sure if he's going to get another chance. I'm not really entirely sure what's going on there. And then another signing that's kind of minor is Michael Crabtree signed with Arizona. And this is a situation where I think that, there's this. I don't really see him. He's not a very consistent player as it is. And going to Arizona, I think that's just going to kind of muddle things for these younger guys. It kind of stunts their development a little bit. And maybe it takes them away from Fitzgerald. So it kind of hurts all the Arizona receivers, at least early on in the season, I think. So yeah. So now let's get into these targets that I've been talking about. Guys that you want to consider drafting in week 1, or for week 1, sorry, that could give you a lot of value based on the matchups they have. So I'm going to give you 3 per pick, or for a slot on your team. Maybe you could start them in a pinch, but ideally you would stash them. So I'm going to do 3 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 6 wide receivers, 3 tight ends, 3 defenses, and 3 kickers. So you get a little bit of mix of everything. So let's start at the quarterback position. So keep in mind, these are guys that you want to draft in week 1 and then try to trade them as quick as you can because their stock I predict is going to drop after week 1. And why do you do this? And that's because it's kind of like, when you're at a job interview and the first impression is kind of like what everybody has in their mind when they see you. I mean, this is kind of the same thing in fantasy football. There's a lot of fans that are pretty casual, don't really know the players very well, and they see an amazing stat number for week 1, and that sticks for many weeks of the season. So there's some guys that literally have the highest value that they're ever going to have in week 1, and I'm trying to identify that now so that way these are guys that I want to try to trade and maybe get a more consistent player down the stretch. And I'll try to give some examples of this as I go along. So at the quarterback position, so the top quarterback that I like as a week 1 start and then trade candidate is Russell Wilson. So Russell Wilson in the first game, they're playing home against the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati had the worst pass defense last year, and their defense is arguably getting worse. They're probably going to be down in this game significantly because it's questions of if AJ Green is even going to play. So Russell Wilson, I think, is going to have a field day against this defense. But the thing to understand about this team is that they're not trying to rely on Russell Wilson anymore. They're trying to mostly try to go back to being a running team because that's what made them successful back 2014, 2015 when they went to the Super Bowls. Is the offense based around Marshawn Lynch. So they're trying to really focus on those running backs. And Russell Wilson might have a good game in week 1, but because the defense is so bad, but then it's hard to tell throughout the season. I don't know if he's going to have these same values again because they're playing the Bengals, and that division's got a lot of other good defenses like the Rams, and maybe even depending on what you think of the 49ers development, that you could consider that too. So yeah, Russell Wilson definitely look at. So number 2 quarterback that I like is Jimmy Garoppolo. This guy's coming off a knee injury, so he's going pretty low in the drafts, but they're playing Tampa Bay, which just is another horrific defense. I like Jimmy Garoppolo because, there are a lot of questions about what exactly he's going to look like, which has his stock pretty low right now, but I think the overall matchup against Tampa Bay is so good that he's going to give you some points, and is his durability going to be there? That's a question. But this is exactly why you want to consider taking this guy as somebody you draft and then trade after week 1 because he may never actually put up these values again because it's hard to get much worse than Tampa Bay. Kind of like Russell Wilson's scenario. And then number 3 is Drew Brees. And, kind of the same reason I think. Drew Brees has a good matchup against Houston, which, don't let J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney fool you because even though they've got a good pass rush, their pass defense itself, it gives up a lot of yards. And especially since they lost Tyrann Mathieu, I think that they're going to be even a little worse next year. They're playing in the Dome anyway, which the Saints offense is always good in the Dome. And, Drew Brees is not always consistent game to game, but he's got so much hype around him that this is an ideal first matchup where you could sell him at his peak, get a lot of value out of him, and then don't have to worry about his inconsistency down the stretch. Do you want to? Maybe you could do something where you get Drew Brees and you get a mid-tier receiver or something, and then you can upgrade to a quarterback that's a little more consistent, like Matt Ryan or something. Like I would do that trade because Matt Ryan is by far going to be a more consistent quarterback than Drew Brees is because he doesn't have the type of running back tandem like Alvin Kamara that on that team. So just something to consider. All right, so for the running backs, so the top running back that I like that's going to have highest value in week 1 is Mark Ingram, the Baltimore Ravens. So they're playing the Miami Dolphins in week 1. Miami is a terrible run defense. I saw an article they already fired their line coach on defense because apparently, and it's only training camp. Like that's a terrible sign. But the reason is because Mark Ingram is an older running back. There's a lot of other running backs on that team, such as Gus Edwards, Kenneth Dixon, that have shown productivity in the past. So, I have serious concerns about Mark Ingram's durability throughout the whole season. But I think that this is a good starting matchup for him, where he's going to get the ball a lot, put up some good numbers. But especially in a team that runs the ball like this as much as they do, I don't see a consistent pattern of him getting the ball or even lasting the whole season. So this is the ideal time to get Mark Ingram and sell him. But just be careful you don't reach for him because he does go pretty high in these drafts. All right, so back to the Seattle Seahawks. I've already harped on the fact that the Bengals' defense is terrible. But for the running back situation specifically, Chris Carson is currently slotted as their number 1 running back. But another guy that is already dealing with injuries right now, and he's got a clear future running back behind him in Rashad Penny. So Chris Carson, great matchup for week 1, but I don't think that he's going to sustain this job throughout the season. I think eventually it's going to go to Rashad Penny. So take advantage of this good matchup against the Bengals while you can, and get Chris Carson at his top value, and then get rid of him. Get a more consistent guy, especially in PPR leagues, because Chris Carson's more of a downhill rushing back than a receiving one. All right. Another one that I like is Tevin Coleman. I hate Tevin Coleman for the season, but again, they're playing Tampa Bay. And I think Coleman is going to be the starter week 1, so, I mean, you have to consider that as, maybe he's going to have some value there. But I think his value is just going to dip throughout the season because Jerick McKinnon's going to get healthy and take away some PPR value there. Coleman is new, but he's got some familiarity with Kyle Shanahan's offense, so I could see him slotting into that starting role initially and doing well. But I don't see it lasting the whole season, so take advantage of it against a bad matchup, or a good matchup against a bad defense. All right, number 4 running back. So Alfred Blue is a backup running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So why do I say him instead of Fournette? And that's because they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City is going to put up points in this game. They're going to rush out to a huge lead, and then there really is no point in using Fournette because he's not a receiving running back. He's more of just a downhill plotter. So I predict what's going to happen is that they're going to end up dumping it off to Alfred Blue a lot because they're going to be trying to play catch up, and especially since this team is now as Steve Spagnuolo as his defensive coordinator. He loves to blitz. I think Foles is going to get flustered and just toss it off to the running back a lot. So I predict Alfred Blue to have a much better game than he's going to have really in any other game this season. And then number 5. So this is a play that's kind of up in the air, but so the combination of Derrick Henry and Dion Lewis are have a good matchup against Cleveland. I'm a little iffy on taking either of them, and especially starting either of them, but could have a great matchup. I think either what's going to happen is that the Titans are going to control the offense and have Derrick Henry get 30 carries, or they're going to fall way behind to Cleveland and they're going to be dumping off to Dion Lewis, kind of like with the Alfred Blue situation. So, but both of them are so dependent on the game script that I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out, but there's a lot of potential either way depending on what happens in that game. And then my last running back to consider as somebody to take week 1 and then trade him is Lesean McCoy. And that's because this guy has so much hype all the time, but he is not at that level anymore, and he's on a pretty bad offense. But the reason I say this is because, right now the team is, they're playing a decent defense, the New York Jets, especially in pass defense. And I think that they're going to end up dumping it off to McCoy a lot, especially since these receivers haven't really stepped up and he's got a lot of new ones to work with. So I could see a situation where Sean McCoy has good value in this game, but I think that as the season goes by, he's not going to be anywhere near the value that people are taking him at. So this is you want to ideally try to get rid of him as soon as you can, is what I'm saying. Maybe even before week 1. So wide receivers, there's a couple of interesting ones here. So one that I really like, and this is going back to that Tampa Bay matchup. Keep in mind, focus on the bad defenses, because there's some really bad defenses out there that these teams can take advantage of, is Marquise Goodwin. So Marquise Goodwin did not have a good season last year. He was injured through the beginning with hamstring injuries and then never really was able to get back to speed on that. But Marquise Goodwin was an excellent receiver during the period in which Jimmy Garoppolo was there after he was traded from the Patriots in 2017. They have good rapport together. Goodwin has a lot of speed. He's a former Olympian. So I think that especially against a defense that gives up a lot of bombs and long touchdowns, I think Goodwin has a lot of value as a guy that could catch 2+ touchdowns, 100+ yards, and really have a very inflated value that you can then trade for later. Because this is a team that, as time goes by, they're going to rely more on Deebo Samuel, maybe even Jalen Hurd. But Marquise Goodwin already has that rapport, and this is a good matchup for him to take advantage of him. I like him as a guy you can get at the end of the draft and then trade him off. Another guy that I like that, who had a good season last year, is Tyler Lockett. And I talked about how I don't expect Tyler Lockett to reproduce the same values from last year because he had a very inflated touchdown per catch ratio. And I think that, again, you've got DK Metcalf there and other young receivers that are going to be stepping up more as the time goes by. And against the Cincinnati Bengals, you got to take advantage of Tyler Lockett here while you can. But he's going pretty high. So, and then you can get really good value out of him if you include him in some kind of package with one of these other running backs I'm talking about. Maybe you can get a better running back or a more consistent receiver. So another guy that I like that you can take is Ted Ginn. And I talked about Ted Ginn and Tre'Quan Smith with regards to the Cam Meredith situation. So because of that, I think that in this matchup against not a very good Houston Texans pass defense, Ted Ginn is going to catch a lot of passes. He's going to get some yards, maybe even get a touchdown or so. But he's 34 years old. I don't see him consistently lasting throughout the season, so I think he could have a good game, but then you trade him. I would include Tre'Quan Smith, but the only reason I don't say that is because I think Tre'Quan Smith could legitimately be a top 25 receiver next year, especially given the news of Cam Meredith. Because you don't want to try to trade Tre'Quan Smith if you draft him, but Ted Ginn you do, because I don't see that lasting all season. All right, so another team, New York Giants, they have no receivers right now. Well, they do, but not like good ones. They have, Golden Tate got suspended. Sterling Sheppard has a broken thumb. It's questionable whether or not he'll play. And then Corey Coleman tore his ACL. So this team is now relying on their lesser receivers, and they're probably going to get down in this game because they're playing the Cowboys. So a guy that I like is Russell Sheppard. He's the experienced one that's there. He's been the most productive of the receivers that are left on the roster. I like him to have a good week 1, especially but only really in the case if Sterling Sheppard doesn't play, because they're going to be thrown a lot because they're going to end up down, and he's not going to repeat this value once they get Tate back and when they get Sterling Sheppard healthy. So you got to take advantage of Russell Sheppard while you can. And they got Darius Slayton, who's a rookie, who might actually end up stepping up and being better than any of them. So Russell Sheppard is a guy you want to get rid of as quick as you can, but could have a good week 1. Another guy like this, who coming back from an Achilles tear, is Emmanuel Sanders. And I'm not a big Emmanuel Sanders fan because of that injury risk, but just a great first matchup against Oakland. And just an absolute paucity of receivers on Denver that they just don't have anybody else to go to. Emmanuel Sanders could have a very good game in week 1, but I have a hard time seeing how he's going to hold up with that type of injury. So that's a good potential play there to take advantage of. All right, and then my 6th one is Dede Westbrook. So Dede Westbrook of the Jaguars is playing the Chiefs, And as I've discussed with Alfred Blue, they're going to be down and they're going to be throwing it a lot. I think Westbrook could have a good game. I do like Westbrook for the season, but I think that this is a game that they're going to be down by so much that like he could have a very good game, and then you want to trade him because I have no idea what the consistency is going to be with these receivers, especially with Nick Foles and as a new quarterback running the helm. We don't really know what his preferences are right now. But anyway, so those are the receivers to watch out for that I think are going to have good week ones, but then you want to trade them. Let's move over to tight end. So tight end, my number one guy to consider in this position is Trey Burton. So Trey Burton, they're playing the Packers on Thursday night. And I think Trey Burton will be a good tight end, but they also have a rookie named not a rookie, he's like a second-year player, Adam Shaheen. He's involved in the offense. Chicago kind of likes to mix things up with different players, but Trey Burton has a great first matchup in week one, and I think that like that means that against the Packers, like he could have a very good game. And then what you want to do is you want to try to get a more consistent tight end. Take advantage of these tight ends that have good matchups now. Get a guy that's made more consistent long-term like O.J. Howard or David Njoku that could be more effective for you long term, sorry. All right, another guy that I like is Blake Jarwin of Dallas. So the Giants, they don't have Landon Collins anymore, so they kind of lost the anchor of that defense. And I think that this has potential to be a very good game for Blake Jarwin. And maybe even Jason Witten. But I mean, so really either one of these tight ends, like they could have a very good game because they're playing the Giants. And then you want to try to get rid of them because I don't really know like what their consistency is either, but a pretty good first matchup. Blake Jarwin is a guy that's especially probably not going to get drafted. So a good play to consider as somebody to throw in there. And then another guy that I like, he was injured throughout most of the last season, but was very productive in the time that he did play, is Will Disley. And again, Cincinnati Bengals. So just saying. But Will Disley was very good in his production that he did play. There is a lot of question of whether or not that was just a flash in the pan, but I mean, but this guy's not getting drafted, and he's playing a terrible defense, so could have a very good first game, and then maybe you can trick somebody into trading him. Like, like just as an example, like the fantasy footballers mentioned this one time when like there was some idiot who like when Will Disley had that huge week one last year, like they dropped Zach Ertz to pick him up. So I mean, people are tight ends are so inconsistent, but people sometimes don't even like pick up on the ones that are like elite. So I mean, this is an example. Like, let's say Will Disley does that again. Like, maybe you can trick somebody even into trading Zach Ertz if they're let alone willing to drop him. Like, I don't know. That was just insane. But anyway, so now let's get into some of the defenses you want to look at. And again, this defense might be a little high. They might because they still got a good reputation. The Baltimore Ravens. But they've lost some pieces from last year. They don't have Terrell Suggs anymore. Don't have C.J. Mosley. Don't have Eric Weddle. There's a lot of questions there, but they're playing Miami, which is consisting of Fitzmagic. That guy is either... Well, sometimes he is like just a machine, but other times he's just an interception machine. Or you got Josh Rosen, who also throws a lot of interceptions. So I just think that's a perfect matchup for them. But there's a lot of questions long term how that defense is going to look, so take advantage of that. The Dallas Cowboys, like again, like the Giants are down their top three receivers, and their line is just terrible. Dallas is going to blitz all over them, and Eli's going to hold on to the ball too long and fumble a couple times probably. So just an excellent first round matchup that's usually getting drafted in the last round of the draft. And then my third favorite defense to stream is the Cleveland Browns. I don't really like this defense at all long term, but they're playing Tennessee, which is a very modest at best offense, especially with Marcus Mariota. Like did not play well last year. I don't really see him exactly lighting up the field this time either. So this is a time to take advantage of Cleveland because they could have a good matchup. An honorable mention, Detroit Lions, because they're playing Kyler Murray, and I think there's potential that he's going to try to play hero ball and throw a lot of interceptions. Detroit is actually a pretty decent fantasy defense because they do tend to get a lot of pick sixes. So this could be a good matchup for them as well. And then, so I'm going to list a few streaming options for kicker because you can very rarely trade a kicker. There's ones that I do like in the first few weeks to stream, like Mike Badgley for San Diego, because if they don't have Melvin Gordon, they might have a hard time in the red zone. Brandon McManus, same thing, because they have Joe Flacco operating the offense. Like, I feel like they might have a hard time scoring in the red zone. And Robbie Gould for San Francisco, I think that could be a good play. But the one that I like is the guy that you can trade, and I've already talked about him before, is Stephen Gostkowski. So why do I say this? So Stephen Gostkowski has almost as much hype as anybody except for maybe Justin Tucker and Greg Zuerlein. But they've got a great first matchup against Pittsburgh, where they're always very good defensive battles. There's usually decided by field goals, and a lot of field goals are kicked. But particularly now, the Patriots are adapting to life without Gronkowski. They have a lot of new receivers. Their running backs are banged up. I see them having a hard time scoring and touchdowns this game. I think this is going to be a game where it's going to be like 18-17 or something. And you could get maybe 6 field goals from Gostkowski or something like that. And there's going to be people out there that they see that and they think, oh, he's back. And then they're going to be willing to trade him for like a defense or something, which is obviously a better play than a kicker. But it's a stretch, but I mean, with hype like this guy has from his years in the past, like, you might be able to actually trick somebody into getting a skill player out of it. And that's what you want to do with kickers. Because they're the definition of inconsistency. So, as a summary, this is for the purposes of week 1 only. And, why do I say this? If you go back to my first video in when I talked about draft strategies, I talked about how in fantasy football you want to treat this as if you're a stockbroker. You want to basically try to get the guys at their best value and switch them to get better players. So think of this as your initial move in the draft. Like, this is your initial chess pieces that you're placing against your opponent. Guys that you can put some low investment in at the beginning and could give you a lot of value in week 1. And you can start thinking of ways you can get these guys in trades. And this is so you can work a step ahead of your opponents. So I think that these are guys that you want to target for week 1. I would recommend you taking a look at them. And who knows, maybe they could ultimately be a stepping stone into winning your league. So even if they don't stay on your roster, everybody plays a part to some degree. But yeah, all right. So that's it. If you have any comments or questions, or if you can think of any other guys that you have questions about, if they're going to have a good week 1 to maybe trade, let me know. I'll answer some questions about that. And so feel free to comment and let me know what you think. So thanks for watching. All right, see you guys.